For staying with us. You're watching Morning Cafe. And this morning we want to talk about a very powerful book, a bold book that talks about, some of the things that are happening in our societies, inequalities. We're talking about corruption, gender rights. And what better way to do it than to look at one of the books? We're talking about The Lion's Dance. It says a smash of a debut by Iris Mwanza. Karibu sana. Karibu means welcome. Yes. I said, and I remember you told me on the side that you don't understand Swahili. So when I say karibu,
I understand.
Have they told you karibu?
I know there's a response and it's not karibu, right?
Asante.
Asante. Asante sana.
All right, you're welcome. So when we talk about The Lion's Den, this is your very first debut. But before we get into it, yeah, who is Iris Mwanza? You know, aside from just being an author, who is Iris?
I am a lawyer, I am a gender advocate, and I am a storyteller. So this has been a dream of mine for a very long time. I've had a long career. I don't know if I should age myself, but
yes.
I have.
You can. But you look so young. What do you mean age yourself?
Thank you so much. I've had a long career in international development and global health. And from there, I moved into gender equality and advocating for gender rights, gender defined very broadly. And I've always wanted to write a book. I think all of us have that feeling, the creative urge and instinct, right? Going back to the days of cave dwellers, you know, they were actually painting on the wall. And so I think we all have a creative outlet. And so for me, it was writing. And as a lawyer, I was writing, you know, as a gender advocate, I was writing, but sort of very serious things, briefs, that type of thing. But I wanted to write a book. And I kept on telling my friends, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. And they were getting bored. They were like, where is this book
write it.
that you've been talking about? You know, please write the book. And so I did. And it was a long process. It took me about 9 years, working full time. So this was weekends and nights, sort of toiling away. From beginning to end, from the time I started it to the time it was published and got out into the world. So you can imagine how delighted I am to have it out in the world. And I think in particular, so important to me to have this book out on the continent. So I live in the US now. I'm a dual citizen of America and Zambia. But my heart is in Africa.
In Africa. So how is this shift from corporate to, you know, now becoming a full-time author? You say it wasn't easy at all, but now you've worked with very big organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates as well. But moving from there now to being a writer, how was that shift?
It's new. It's a big adventure. So I left the Gates Foundation in February. So
very recent.
Very recent, very recent. So maybe you're going to have to ask me again in about 6 months. No, it's been something that I've worked my whole life, and I feel like I've had a full career in development. The space has changed very, very dramatically, not for the better. I think it's not a surprise to anybody in the audience. Most countries are struggling. US government commitment has gone down significantly. We're going to have to figure it out. But I felt like I had given what I could to development, and I wanted to try this new chapter. I'm not sure if I'm done with the full-time career that I had, but I'm really loving having the time and the space and the latitude to come to places like Nairobi, to talk about the book and to talk freely. Obviously, when you work for big institutions, I've worked for the World Bank as well. You know, you can't just come out and say whatever you want to. You're not speaking oftentimes for yourself. And this provides a lot of freedom, but also a lot of time. So I'm working on my next 2 books. Maybe it's a bit crazy, but I'm working on another 2 books. One is going to be a sequel to The Lion's Den.
Amazing.
And one is a completely different story.
Because I was coming to that question later on in the interview. Because if you look at it, it's talking much about justice.
Yes.
And the question that I would ask is if it's going to continue this legal fiction, or you're now going to change, you know, pace and take a look at, say, romance, something totally different.
I don't think so. I love thrillers, and because I have a legal background, I love legal thrillers. You know, you can build up and you can talk about a lot of themes, but there is a climax, right? You're going into a courtroom. And I like to make it a little bit different. So it's not like the story begins and ends in the courtroom. It begins with a social justice issue, explores it throughout the novel and through the character. The main character in this book is a woman, a very young woman, very determined, fierce lawyer called Grace Zulu. But she's very inexperienced, so she's just starting out. She's just learning the ropes, and she's idealistic, at least at the beginning of the book. She thinks that law, legal systems, justice are all the same thing, and then she learns, kind of the hard way, that actually law and justice sometimes are not even related, and she has to learn how to navigate. How do you navigate the legal system? How do you navigate the political system? How do you navigate society? Especially her case and her client is a human rights issue. And it's based around in Zambia and I think also in Kenya and many other African countries. It's about same-sex relations, which are not just against the law, but are criminalized. And so her client is a young teenager who has been snatched up from his parents' house, accused of crimes against the order of nature, which is the Zambian Penal Code terminology, and has been imprisoned. So early in the book, they meet for the first time and the last time, and then he disappears. And so she is on a quest to find out what happened to her client, Bessie, and also to try and get justice.
So you see, you're talking boldly about, the cruelty of the anti-LGBTQ, in African countries, which are very, very reserved to begin with. So from where you sit, do you think with this book, you're trying to display something where maybe people who are, is it called the displaying what nature? Something to
crimes against
the order of nature. Would you say that they should be given space to express themselves? Is it what you're trying to address with this book?
Well, first of all, I have to say it's really, really important. It's not just the situation in Africa. In the US as well, there's a lot of not just anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment, but laws, efforts. But there's a robust system. So you see this battle in place, right? Usually through the court system. I think in Africa, we're talking about the laws. Most of these laws are actually colonial laws. So they're not even our laws, but they're still on the books. And so my hope for this book is to open a conversation. Zambia, where I'm from, is very conservative. And it's been very difficult to have a conversation. But I think through the book and through a protagonist who is a young woman who's finding her ways, she's Catholic, she's very religious. There are lots of different characters in the book. Bessie's family, Bessie's mother is very conservative herself. So it's really an exploration of what happens in society, what happens at the family level, what happens at the legal level, what happens at the national level and political level, but through the vehicle of the main protagonist, Grace. So we see it through Grace's point of view. How does she navigate her own internal struggles, her struggle with religion? Are these things aligned or in conflict? One of her closest confidants is a Catholic priest. And so they have these robust conversations. So I don't think it really matters where you are on the spectrum, but it is very important, I think, to have frank and honest and open conversations. Because, from my travels all around the world, when we talk about gender, we all identify in different ways, right? And it's not just around gender. We can identify in terms of race. In the US, that's a very big thing. Immigration. I mean, I'm a black woman in the States. I'm an immigrant in the States. That definition has changed for me over the last 20 years where I've lived there. Initially, it was fine. Now, as an immigrant, you feel very, very unwelcome. So really kind of exploring, what does it mean to have an identity? What does it mean to be protected? And what does it mean to be unprotected? And what does that impact on the individual, but also the family members, and then the society and the nation?
So do you think as Africans we're ready for these conversations around, same-sex relationships? talking about sex in itself is something that, Africans are quite conservative about. And then we're now talking about same-sex relationships. Do you think as Africans, as much as you're saying, the Lion's Den opens up, that room for conversations around this, are we ever going to get to that point?
I hope so. I think so. But I think this is the beauty of a book. It is a private conversation, right? I can pick up the book, read it, and hopefully my mind will be open. Doesn't necessarily have to happen, but that is an opportunity for me to have a conversation with the person. If you and I are having a conversation and we disagree, it's very hard for us to get to a place. Usually we'll just end in an argument. But through a book, I can explore, and as I said, I can actually identify with the conservative characters and say, oh, actually, no, I don't believe that this is right. But through the book, my hope, if I've done my job well as a writer, and one thing I love about thrillers is they're exciting. So they take you on this journey, wherever you think it's going to go. You want to know what happens next. It's going to take you on this journey. So you can enjoy the ride at a very superficial level, or you can go deep and say, let me think about this. Let me think about this more. How would I feel if it was my family? How would I feel if I was persecuted as, for example, now I feel persecuted as an immigrant? How would I feel to be prosecuted, to have to go through a legal system for whatever reason, right? And we see things change. Like all of a sudden it could be, leader wakes up and says, you know what, I want everybody in this country to be a Muslim or a Hindu or Jewish. And if you're not, then you're like, oh my goodness, all of a sudden now, the things I was saying I was against, that's me. I'm on the receiving end. And so I really think this is the very important message is really around human rights. It's not really about what we want or what our preferences are, or even changing our preferences, but just respecting diversity and ensuring that human rights, as enshrined by the Constitution, by the United Nations, that we respect them. We respect them.
In this book, we see Bessie's mother still very much in denial about Bessie, being in a same-sex relationship. Does she come to that, realization and acceptance that, that is the life that his son chose to live?
She knows.
She knows?
I think she knows, but she's a church woman, and I think it's just very hard because she knows and lives in a society. She knows that it will be very difficult for her friends to accept. So she kind of makes excuses and say, oh no, Bessie is a comedian. He likes to just make people laugh. Whereas she's in denial to some degree, but I think in her heart, she knows, but she has a lot of fear because she knows also that the life that Bessie is choosing is very dangerous in this conservative society. She has fear for him, as anybody would for their child. She wants the best for her child, but even she's unable to protect her child in the end.
And the penal code, when I take a look at this book, you talk about if Bessie is found guilty, he might go to jail for around 14 years, thereabout. Is that how it happens in Zambia? Because this book is based in the 90s.
Yes.
Is that the law in Zambia? Talk to us about that.
Yes. So as I said, it was a colonial law where the book is set late 80s, early 90s. That was the law. And unfortunately, it's still the law today. So yes.
All right.
Even longer than 14 years.
It's still there up to date in Zambia.
Because
in Kenya, we don't talk much about LGBTQ, and if you're found in a same-sex relationship, then you're taken inside. So if you talk about Zambia being one of those African countries where somebody is taken to jail if they're in a same-sex relationship, then it begs the question, was that, what do we call it? Was Zambians always like that? In the colonial area where, the whites were there, and then now they brought in the same-sex relationship. Because I see there's an Indian here as well who is, accused of being different. Was he accused, or was he indeed different?
Well, you have to read the book and
you have to do them
and find out. I think the issue is really about people who are identified as different, right? So, Mr. Patel is not Christian. So already he's considered an outsider who lives in a rural area. Mr. Patel's not married. So there's already suspicion. Why would this man be, he's not one of us, and then he's not married. So, you know, he's already an outcast, and he's treated as an outcast. And so I really wanted to interrogate the sense of belonging. Who really belongs? Even for Grace. Grace is a rural girl who moves to Lusaka, which is the city. And she's got, you know, like tribal marks on her face. Yeah. And so people can see already, and from her accent, they can tell that, oh, actually, this is a rural girl. There's classism. Yeah. How that's something that she has to navigate. And so it's really interesting to me that we're very quick to say, oh, you know, this person is other. And when you other people, it becomes quite easy to turn a blind eye when you see suffering and you see persecution, and in this case, legal prosecution.
You talked about you want to explore more about what happens in the courtroom, and you're also a lawyer yourself. Yes. You're writing about law. So what's the inspiration behind it exactly, and what happens in the courtroom that, you know, you're trying to tell us in the Lion's Den?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is that the legal systems are also part of a bigger system. And so where you have dysfunction, where you have corruption, the legal system also is infected with that. And that has a really huge consequence for justice. You can't get justice if you can't even get into court, if there's some expectation of payment. If there's some expectation of payment, if you're poor, you can't afford justice. And so really just seeing how you have these sort of viruses infecting and corrupting and corroding everything. But they're real impacts on real individuals. And even though the book is fiction, we all know from our experiences, police brutality, right? Impunity, no accountability. All of that erodes the fabric of society and our ability to enjoy our rights, no matter who you are and however you identify. So have you maybe received backlash so far, you know, just with centering the queer community as quite a critical topic, institutions being against them? Any backlash so far? And do you foresee it? I mean, I think one thing that's been very heartbreaking is the book has not been well received in Zambia, as you can imagine, because it is conservative, because also it's quite critical of the government then, which is the Kaunda government. And I think there is a tendency with time, because Kaunda was one of the independence leaders, you know, we elevated him so much. But at the end of his regime, late 80s, early 90s, he was not loved. And so people don't really want to remember, and they don't want to accept that actually the truth of the matter is, and I was a student at that time, we were not happy. We were not happy with the Kaunda regime. There were lots of problems. That's why the population voted him out of power. So we kind of have this revisionist history. So I think there are quite a lot of reasons, but I think at the heart of it is a discomfort around discussing LGBTQ plus rights. And I think it's easy to say, oh no, that was a colonial thing. The British or the imperialists have brought it into our society, but we never had it in our own culture. Lots of nonsense like that, when we know this is the reality. People are born in all kinds of ways. We come out in the world in all kinds of ways, and we will grow, we will learn, we will go out. But yeah, so that I think has been the hardest thing, because most places, their home is where they really get the most support. So I think amongst friends and family, of course, they support me. It's been really wonderful, especially my father, who's Zambian, quite conservative. But he loved the book. And he said he was really, because initially when I was writing it, I told him what it was about. He was like, don't you think you could write about something else? Typical African parent. You know, right? But when he was finished and, you know, he read the book and he was helping me with the Nsenga translations, especially the spellings, to make sure I had them right. He said, I'm really proud of you. And that gave me a lot of hope, because I was like, well, if my dad can enjoy the story, then anybody can. Yes.
I'm enjoying it so far. It's a very good book, but I'm still wondering why, you know, Zambians are quite not responding well, you know, to this book that, you know, just tries to shift their mind. But is there so much of Iris in this book, in Greece?
I wish.
You wish?
I wish.
Why so? Why do you wish?
I think, you know, I would say maybe the 19, 20-year-old, you know, when I was in law school, I was very idealistic, like Grace is. I really believed that I was going to be a human rights lawyer. I really believed that I could change the world, and just like most young people. And I think, so I was able to channel some of that through her, you know, just that excitement of, you know, she really believes she's made it.
Yeah.
She's achieved her dream. She's a village girl who struggled so mightily to get to law school and then fought her way through law school. And she's brilliant. She was top of her class. And, you know, we know that it's very difficult oftentimes for the girl child, especially rural girls, to get all the way.
Yeah.
You know, there was pressure on her to get married young. She didn't want to get married. She wanted to go to school. Her mother, it's like, you're delusional. You know, we're basically starving here.
Yeah.
I've arranged this wonderful marriage to the chief, and you're telling me you don't want to get married? It's like, this is our path to respectability and money and food. And you are talking about some sort of pipe dream of going to university. But she believes in herself. And I think one thing that has hurt her the most with her mother is her mother doesn't believe in her. Her mother doesn't see the dream. And so, you know, the mom's like, no, child marriage for you. And she's like, no, I'm going to forge my own path. So she's really, really fought hard. And so she thinks, I've made it. Yeah. Not really realizing that actually that's the beginning of her next journey.
So the suffering follows her even after she escapes home. They will read about it, but give them a teaser. You know, when you tell them what happens in the book, I really know somebody maybe is wondering, what happens next? She escapes home? Yeah, so
she goes to law school, obviously. I mean, the book starts, she's already a lawyer, but you kind of have some flashbacks and she go back and see why she's so passionate about defending human rights. Because she's suffered discrimination herself, and she knows what it means to be on the receiving end. And she believes that that's why she went to law school. She wanted to be a defender, and Grace is a defender and a protector of vulnerable people. And that's what she strives to do, but it's just not as easy as she thought. Getting the degree, she thought it was the end, whereas that was just the beginning.
So that is the goodness about it. She finally gets a degree. But what are the challenges that maybe you faced? This is fiction, yes, but the challenges that you faced in trying to bring, you know, what is happening in the society, especially in the queer community, which is a conversation that is still a taboo, as we've said, then the challenges that you faced trying to just bring this to life.
Well, I think it's different depending on where you are. And I think it's really important to say, like, I was in South Africa. South Africa is very liberal.
They're very open.
They're very open. The constitution is very protective. The laws are very protective. And so it's a very different conversation that you're having in South Africa versus I also went to Nigeria. Nigeria is on the other side, very conservative. And so really, it's night and day, even in this continent. And same thing in the US. If you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, very, very liberal. But when you get into smaller towns or cities, then you find, again, the conservatism coming up. And I think that's what I love about books, because we're talking about conversations, right? You can embrace a book, you can enjoy a book, even if it's about a place you've never heard of. So in the States, lots of people don't know Zambia. They're like, oh, we know Kenya. We've heard of South Africa, we've heard of Nigeria, but where is Zambia? Is it close to Gambia? Is it Zimbabwe? You're like, no, Zambia. So part of it is also educating that we still have these laws on the books in the West. If you're on the continent, again, it's a very different conversation depending on where you are and who you're talking to. And I think that just brings in the diversity of the world, but also the diversity that we have on our own continent. And I'm sure if I left Nairobi, went to a smaller city, again, it would be a different kind of conversation. But this is the vehicle to have a conversation. People so far have really enjoyed the book, even in very conservative places. They've read the book. I've had meetings, also one meeting in Lusaka with some members of the LGBTQ plus community. Clandestine meeting. People didn't want to identify, say their full names, or no photos, definitely no selfies or anything like that. But they just wanted to have a conversation. They said they appreciated being seen as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Iris, for being here and for allowing us to have this conversation about the Lion's Den, which explores a couple of themes: justice and law, gender and power, queer rights in Africa, corruption and power, and of course the courage that is displayed in the main character, Grace Zulu. That is it, The Lion's Den. You can grab it at any bookstore in Nairobi. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Morning Cafe. Stay with us.